All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Before we get started, just a couple of those housekeeping items to take care of. I did just have a question of how long are the sessions? About 30 minutes or so, depending on how many questions we have at the end. But we will have time for questions at the end. You can type those in by clicking that Q&A section in the lower portion of your control panel. I know some people chat throughout as well, so feel free to do that as well. We will be posting a recording of the webinar on our blog. The link for that will be shown at the end. And if you would like a PDF copy of the slides and the presentation, there will be a link to download that on that same post as the recording, which typically is up about 24 hours at most after we're done today. If your question does not get answered today, please email our support inbox, which will be shown at the end as well. All right. What is on the agenda for today? The theme is making changes today for a healthier tomorrow. So we're going to start with talking a bit about creating habits and setting goals. That's a big part of actually making changes. So it's really important that we cover that. And then we'll talk about some specific things you can do in each area of your health to get started today to make your health better for all of your tomorrows. All right. First, a quiz. How long does it take to create a habit? What have you read or seen in those ads for diets or workout programs? 21 days, 28 days, 90 days? Well, one study at the University College in London tried to find out the answer. So what they did is they took 96 participants and asked them to choose an everyday behavior that they wanted to turn into a habit. They chose things like eating a piece of fruit with lunch, drinking water every day, or running 15 minutes after dinner. The results? Well, on average, it took 66 days until a habit was formed. One interesting thing right off the bat was that missing a day or two didn't affect that habit formation much. So here's lesson number one for today. If you miss one day, please don't throw everything away. I hear a lot when I talk to people of someone who started out great and then you don't feel good, you go on a trip, or you just don't feel like exercising or eating perfect that day, and it turns into 2 days, 3 days, and the end of your effort. So just like one day of good habits isn't going to give you the perfect health, one day of bad habits isn't going to ruin your efforts, okay? Another big point from this study is that how long it took to create the habit depended greatly on what that habit was, right? Kind of makes sense. People who want to drink a glass of water after breakfast only took 20 days to create the habit. One person that wanted to do 50 sit-ups after their morning coffee still hadn't created the habit after the end of the study at 84 days. They did a graph that showed curves and determined that some of the habits that people chose could have taken as long as 254 days to create. So what does this mean? Why am I telling you this? Well, lesson number 2 for today, it means the easier the change, the better. Don't set yourself up for failure by trying to do too much too soon. Now, it takes patience to do it this way, but you're going to have a lot longer lasting results. Okay, so now that we know, creating habits can take different lengths of time, right? How do we even start creating a habit? Well, there's a concept created by a man by the name of Charles Duhigg called the habit loop. It states that we have a cue, a routine, which is the action that we want to take, and then the reward. So to start, we know our habits are triggered by cues, something that gets us to do that habit, anything that triggers us to complete the action. So first, we need to create a new cue. Now, this is easier said than done for sure, but let's talk about some tips to get started. The first tip in identifying a cue is to look at your daily routine and identify any cues that you already do or any actions you already do that you can use as a trigger to prompt a new action. You can do squats while you brush your teeth in the morning because you always brush your teeth in the morning. You can walk during your lunch break. You can exercise during commercial breaks. Prepare homemade lunch while your coffee is brewing. Set out your workout clothes so you can see them in the morning when you get up. You can make a new cue as well. This could be setting an alarm on your phone or your computer, or actually listening to your activity tracker when it buzzes on your wrist to prompt you to stand up and stretch. an alarm to remind you to eat the healthy snacks so you won't be hungry right after work. Again, this isn't something that's just going to automatically flip that switch and work right away. You still have to create that habit, which can take some time, right? But we need that cue to get started. But stick with it. You can have external or internal cues as well. The most common cues are going to be external, like we just talked about, like those other daily habits to build on, like alarms that remind you of it. But sometimes they can turn into internal habits as well. So those are harder to train and develop, but they get to be really helpful in the long run. So for example, something as simple as the feeling that you get when you sit for too long. Think about that. If you're at your desk or whatever it is, you start to feel that, right? That triggers you to stand up and move. That's something that we can learn to recognize as a cue instead of ignoring it when we do, because we do that quite a bit, right? Now, some of you might be thinking, what about those cues that trigger negative habits? First off, ask if you can change that cue. If you drive past a specific ice cream place every day and you have to stop and get that chocolate shake, can you drive a different route? If it adds 1 minute to your commute, hopefully that's an easy compromise to make for your health, right? We change that cue. If you always have a bag of chips after dinner, then either stop buying the bag of chips if possible, or use that cue of eating dinner to go for a walk after instead of eating, right? If you can't change the cue, if it's something that you always do, then you have to work on using that cue to trigger a different habit. I had a participant who would always have to have a cigarette with her cup of coffee in the morning before her shower. So what we did is we worked on switching up her routine. She took a shower first so that she was clean, and then she didn't want to smell again after smoking, right? So we took away that cue, or we made it something non-desirable, right? So try different things. You're gonna have to get creative. Just make an effort to detach those mental connections to the negative cues. Again, it's not gonna happen overnight, but keep working at it. The brain is really amazing in its ability to be as efficient as possible. So it's gonna work against you for a little bit, but eventually it will realize that you're making new connections, and then it will automate those actions and make it so you don't hardly have to think about doing those good habits. Okay, so we have the cue. The next we want to make sure that we complete that habit loop. And now we need to find something like a reward, something positive. So we've already talked about creating the cue for the habit we want to perform. The final step is making the brain figure out that this loop is worth remembering. So we need positive reinforcement from the action to start creating that total connection to help make that action more automatic, creating that habit. When you anticipate something positive from something you do, you're going to want to do that action again, right? One example is if you want to get up in the morning and exercise. So your cue is your alarm. Your cue is having your clothes set out in your room ready to go. So you see those cues triggering you to pop in that DVD. But to really cement it, you say, all right, after this workout, I get my coffee, or after this workout, I will be able to check my phone or watch my Netflix show. Or you only get to watch that Netflix show if you're on the treadmill, something like that, right? So your brain is going to start to remember that you get that quote reward when you exercise, and it starts to create that positive connection with the exercise, with the action, with the cues, thereby reinforcing that desire to get up. And then again, we keep doing it and we do it. And then our body starts to get used to it, our brain starts to get used to it, and we create that habit. Simple equation, right? But finding the ingredients is up to you. It might take some time to figure out what reward works. And please, let's put away that thought that the reward would maybe be an unhealthy snack, please. I know that's what some of you are thinking. I have done it before too. But honestly, the reward can be as simple as doing a little celebration for yourself, saying great job to yourself, put a big smile on your face. I know it sounds silly, but if it makes you happy, if it gets that positive emotion going, your brain's going to remember that, okay? An additional note from this habit loop comes from a man named BJ Fogg of Stanford University. His approach uses the same principles, but he uses the terms anchor movement, tiny behavior, and instant celebration. So what he does is have people write down the anchor movement and the new tiny behavior in a little recipe, as he calls it. So he says, after I blank, I will blank. So an example, after I turn off the TV at night, I will set out my workout clothes, right? It's something that you do consistently that you can add that little habit to. Start small, and then you build on those tiny changes. Another extremely valuable tip from him is that simplicity matters more than motivation, at least in the beginning. I love this, right? Motivation is hard. Those are questions we get all the time. How do I stay motivated? So in the beginning, don't rely on motivation as much right away. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, like I've already said once, don't try to change too much too soon. Keep it easy, keep it simple. If the behavior is really easy, you don't need much motivation to start with, right? But if the behavior is hard, you're going to need a lot more of that motivation. And motivation, as we know, can be pretty unreliable. Depending on how your life is going, that motivation can go down the drain pretty fast, right? So keeping it simple takes away that aspect right away. And then you can build on those simple habits to create more motivation, more positive reinforcement to get you ready for those bigger changes. And honestly, those bigger changes, if we cut them into smaller changes, they will seem smaller, but in the end, you'll say, hey, that was a big change that I made. And I can't stress this enough. Make it as easy as possible on yourself. You don't have to do everything right away. It takes time. We are in a society of instant gratification. I absolutely know that, but we need to work on changing that mindset, especially when it comes to our health. It's not a one-day thing. It's a lifetime that we're doing. Change takes time, but if you give yourself grace, give yourself patience, next year at this time, you're going to be amazed at the huge changes that you've made. Okay, let's talk about actually creating goals to help you move towards those changes that you want to make. Now, if you just say, I'm just going to start eating better, or I'm going to start exercising, it doesn't really give you any direction. And without that direction, it's easy to get lost pretty quickly. Now, most of you have probably seen this. You've probably heard of a SMART goal, but it's really worth revisiting again and using it as a blueprint for the goals that you may be starting with the new year. If you've already set your New Year's resolution, look at it again, make sure it has all these components to give you the best chance of success. So I'm going to run through these real quick. So the S stands for specific. The first letter pretty much encompasses all the other letters. You can't be vague like I already talked about, like I'm going to go to the gym and then expect to be successful. Specific means putting as much detail as you can. So instead of saying I'm going to the gym, I'm going to say I'm going to go to the gym 3 times this week at 5:30 when I get off work, and I'm going to do 10 minutes on the treadmill, and then I'm going to do that weight circuit that I printed off from Pinterest. Measurable. Now, this is how you track your progress, right? In the goal I just mentioned, it's the 3 times a week and the 10 minutes on the treadmill and that weight circuit. Now, as you progress, you change this part of the goal. You could say, okay, I got my 10 minutes on the treadmill. Next week, I'm going to try for 15 minutes. You need a way to keep track of your goals, to measure them so you can see that progress. That builds that internal motivation when you see that little progress. And then you have something to work for, right? And then you progress, you get better. We need to progress our goals. If I stayed 10 minutes on the treadmill is a great start, but if I only did that for a year, I'm not going to see much change for that, right? The goal is to keep building and to keep adding to that. So we need to be able to measure it to know what our next step is. Some people do different things for A, so I'm going to include all of them. The first 2 are similar, attainable and achievable. This just means kind of what I've already been saying. Be smart with your SMART goals. Don't say, I'm going to go to the gym for an hour every day if that's not going to be realistic for you to achieve. We already talked about tiny habits, and you start small and attainable so you can see that early success that's going to help motivate you to increase and progress. You can always increase your goal later. So start off with an attainable goal and work from there. Some people use action-based as the A, which just means I have to take action, right? You need to set a goal that requires you to do it, to do something, to take that step. That's the go to the gym, the treadmill, the circuit. If your goal is, I want to lose weight, and you have no action to do, you're not going to give yourself ways to get there, right? You have to give yourself the steps to take. So there's a couple different ones for R as well. First one is realistic, which is similar to attainable and achievable, right? For that A, just be realistic. Know that it takes time to create habits, so don't set yourself up for failure. The other R that some people use is relevant. So make sure that your goal is relevant to your life right now. Does your goal line up with your current habits, your current life, and your long-term goals? If it's not getting you to that ultimate long-term goal, you might want to rethink what that first or next step should be. And lastly, we've got time-based. Setting yourself a time frame to achieve goals can be really helpful because it makes you stick to the schedule, right? It keeps it in your mind. With the example goal, the time is the days that you're going to go and how long you're going to go for. Now, you could also set a goal to increase your current running time, but add a date as a deadline to increase, right? So I'll be running on the treadmill for 25 minutes at a time by March 1st. Now, this is a longer term goal, which forces you to set more of those short-term goals to get there. This works great for some people. You will obviously want to gradually increase that time so you can make the 25 minutes by March. So you're more mindful, right? You work harder to get to that time by that date. If you simply said, I'm gonna be running 25 minutes on the treadmill by whenever, that whenever could be March 1st, but it could be December 1st or never, because you never increased your time because you didn't have a reason to. Now, I want to add a little caveat to this because you need to be careful with this part of the goal if you're using dates, right? You need to still make sure that it's realistic. We want a date to keep us mindful of things. That's ideal, right? But it doesn't work for everybody to have that pressure. Sometimes it can turn into a negative thing. So just be mindful of how you use dates. You know, for the time-based, you might just want to say, okay, let's just use the 3 days per week for 10 minutes, and then we'll see if there's a longer term goal that I want to use. So again, just be careful with that and just be mindful of how you are motivated yourself. Okay, so we've got a blueprint on how to set goals. The next step is we have to put it into action, right? Let's talk about some ideas for each area of our health that you can do today to build on this year. So that next year, this time, you're like, look what I did. I'm amazing, right? I mean, you're all amazing anyways, but let's make it even better. Let's start with nutrition. This is huge, right? Nutrition is such a big topic and hard to get your head around sometimes. So if you're not sure where to start, my first suggestion is to track. Tracking works, right? If you don't know what you're eating and taking in on a daily basis, it's going to be really hard to set goals to improve. And that's where we get lost sometimes. We say, I want to eat better. So, but where are you starting now? What does that mean to you? Because that's going to mean something different to you than to the person sitting next to you. So today, if you don't have an app to track, download one. We've got your My Health Check 360 app, but there's lots of other great apps out there too. But if you already have one and haven't been using it, make it a goal to maybe start looking at it again. You can track on paper too. There's no law against going old school, just a little easier because a lot of the apps have the actual information on the foods as far as sugar and that type of stuff. But anyways, once you get a feel, 2 or 3 normal days, maybe a weekend day to see what's normal for you, then you can maybe start to set some small goals. Now, I can't tell you how much protein to eat, how many carbs to eat, how many sugars and fats to eat. That depends on so many factors like exercise, age, gender, health conditions, those types of things. But there are some really basic places to get started too. So for example, fruits and veggies. It's recommended 5 to 9 servings of fruits and veggies per day. So, really the more the better. A lot of us probably aren't at that level. So if you start tracking and you're not seeing many of those, hey, let's set a goal. Like I said in the beginning with that study, add in a fruit or add in a veggie to your lunch. The great thing with setting goals that are focused on the positive aspect of adding in foods rather than saying I can't have foods is it typically, it just sounds better in your head, right? Oh, I get to eat this. It's not like, oh, I can't eat that, because then we're automatically going to want to do it. So, and then if you choose to eat those healthier whole foods first, like fruits and veggies, typically you won't be as hungry for those maybe not so good foods. So you automatically kind of start to cut down on those anyways, right? So it's a win-win. But that's just kind of a side note. Try to focus on positive goals rather than what I'm denying myself, right? It's not always the case. You have to look at those things. For example, added sugars, which is my next example here. The American Heart Association recommends no more than 36 grams of added sugars for men and 25 for women. And again, a lot of us, if we are tracking, we're over that, right? So again, that's a great place to set some small goals too. You don't have to be there right away if you're way over, but just keep that in mind. As a reminder, added sugars are those that don't naturally occur in food. So if you're having, if you have an apple or a strawberry, that's not what they considered added sugar. So that wouldn't count in that 36 or 25 grams. But that sugary cereal, for example, that you had for breakfast is something to take a closer look at, right? The possibilities and goals with nutrition are truly endless. And again, tracking specifically, going back to that, is going to help give you ideas for goals. And also it's going to make it measurable. It's going to help with those benchmarks to continue to progress and keep up that motivation. Okay. All right, let's talk about exercise. Side note, I'm going to ask you guys to give me some good examples of what you want to do for a goal at the end. So start thinking about some stuff, okay? All right. How about exercise? Now, really, truly, honestly, the best way to get started, especially if you're not doing much right now, do something. I don't care if it's 5 minutes of walking in place around your living room, it's still better than nothing. Get up now and walk in place while you're listening to me ramble on for the next 8 minutes or so, if you want to, right? The recommendation is 150 minutes of moderate activity. So getting that heart rate up a little bit, each week, or 75 minutes of more intense exercise. But it doesn't mean you have to start off there, right? And it doesn't have to be in 150 minutes in one big chunk. You can break that up into any increments you want. So today, what you can do to get started, you can look at your schedule for the next week, find some time that you can walk, that you can run, that you can dance, that you can go to the gym, that you can put in a YouTube video, whatever it is that you want to do. Hopefully find something that is enjoyable for you, at least right away. Again, we want to keep that motivation high. If all you can find is 5 or 10 minutes, that's totally fine. Again, we have to have a starting point. I hear a lot of people that say they don't have time for exercise, right? Absolutely, I get it. Our lives are busy. We have a family, we have jobs, we have lots of stuff going on, but if you can maybe do an audit of your time, let's say if you're scrolling through and liking or pinning exercise videos, you could probably find a couple minutes to do them, right? So just something to think about. If you can start to create a habit of exercise specifically, you're going to find that it's easier to want to build in more time because you're going to start to feel better. Physically, mentally, emotionally, there are so many benefits to getting that heart rate up. You release fantastic hormones. They're going to help immediately and long term, okay? And then you can build up to that recommended amount. It does not take much time to start to feel those improvements. The key, again, get started, do something, and then you can continue to build from there to keep seeing more benefits. All right, last two areas, stress and sleep. Okay, stress, right? I mean, what are you going to say? These last 2 years have been insanely stressful, but what can you do now to start dealing with the stress that you've got? First, figure out if you can change your stressors. What's stressing you out? Is it in your control to change them or out of your control? Can you avoid a certain situation or maybe a certain person? Can you turn off the negative news or social media? Take a less busy route home? Avoid getting in the elevator with certain people. I know it sounds silly, but again, it's those little things that we get those stress reactions from certain situations. And if we can avoid it, that'd be awesome. Some things we can actually change if we think about it. But obviously, a lot of our stressors are not something that we can avoid, right? At least not every single time. If you can't avoid the stressors, we need to accept that, right? Stress is part of our daily lives. There's no getting around it. And stress can produce some fantastic ideas and products and all that good stuff. But to use stress to our advantage, we have to kind of change our mindset about it. If you can't control that stressor, then you can use other tools to help get through that and put that positive thoughts on things with positive spin, they can outweigh the negative thoughts that you might have. You're going to have negative thoughts. We all do. But if you can have more positive thoughts than negative thoughts, you're going to start to feel better overall. So one way to do this is to practice gratitude. If you've listened to any of my webinars, I pretty much say this every month. It's so easy to focus on the negative. Our brains are hardwired to do that biologically, really. But taking some time to actually focus on what we're grateful for can make a huge difference in how we see and react to our stressors. You can take gratitude walks to focus on things that are positive in your life. You can do it during your commute in the mornings. You can do it during your morning shower. You can do it before bed. Having paper, paper journal or electronic gratitude journal is a physical way to practice gratefulness, but you don't have to. You can just think of things too, right? So make it a goal to take some time each day, if possible, to either think or write down some things that you're grateful for. And then breathing for stress, deep breathing specifically. When we're stressed and things are getting a bit more than we can handle, we typically do the opposite of deep breathing. Our breath comes out quicker and shallower, and it has the opposite of a calming effect, right? We're in that fight or flight stress response. So taking a minute or 10, 20, 30 seconds to focus on taking 1, 2, 3 deep breaths will help your body physically calm down. Meditation goes along with this too. You can listen to music and focus on your breathing and just being in the present. There's guided meditation where someone gives you direction on where to focus your thoughts and can give you a positive message about something. Same thing, there's apps out there. I usually say a couple, Headspace and Insight Timer are a couple of the favorites of the coaches, but there's lots of other ones. There's new ones all the time. So do your research, find what works for you. I wish I had more time for all of these areas, but again, do some research. We've got some other webinars on our blog. Think about trying breathing or meditations. And then create a stress relief toolbox for yourself. So this isn't complicated. Basically, it is making a list of some healthy ways to relax and de-stress, right? Going for a walk, listening to music, petting your pets, deep breathing, gratitude journal, whatever makes you happy. You should strive to do at least one of those things every single day, even if you're not stressed, because it will help you deal with stress if you already have those de-stressors built into your life. Taking some time to make sure you're relaxing and have some quality time with the feel-good activity is going to help you deal with the stress you already have. Again, it's going to help you handle the stressors that you're not anticipating too. Those are the ones that get us, right? The stuff that pops up. So if we already have those in our toolbox, those de-stressors, it's going to help. All right, I'm almost out of time. But sleep, again, don't think that these aren't important because they're last, because they are extremely important to make goals around. So with sleep specifically, a couple things, create a routine if you can. Now, if possible, if you can go to sleep and wake up at the same time, that's perfect. But I know that's not realistic and a lot of us can't do that, right? So what you should try to do is have a similar routine before you go to bed. So whenever that may be, you can do that little routine. It can help calm you down, get you to sleep quicker. So again, listening to music, reading, taking a warm bath or shower, deep breathing, those meditations, really anything that's going to relax you is going to be good. And there's 1-minute meditations out there. So don't think that you need a whole lot of time to have a little routine. Depending on how much time you have, just use what you can and do what you can. And again, try to build on that. And then the environment, right? I mean, the temperature of the room, the noise, the light, your quality of your mattress and your pillows. I mean, there's so many different things that you can do, those actions you can take to upgrade your sleep physically and mentally. Sleep.org, I say this on all of my sleep webinars, has some great tips on different things that you can look at. So I know I went through those two last ones real quick, but again, find some areas that you really want to focus on this year. Make that SMART goal, and then day by day, right? One little thing each day is going to add up. When we have 365 days in a year, you can do a lot of good things just by making one little change, right? All right. I want to hear what you guys are going to do. Let me pull up the chat and the Q&A. What are your SMART goals? Who wants to share? Ooh, lots of people. Yep, there's different apps that you can do. Yep. Walking with the dog. Yeah, see, adding in kids or pets to your goals, if you know that they're going to make you do activities, is a great goal because there's your accountability partner, right? I didn't even talk about that today. All right, so let's see. I have some other questions here that I will answer. Let me see here. Any other goals? Yeah, lots of ones on the dog. All right, 20 minutes of activity after work each day. All right, good. Now again, make sure that's realistic for you. Have a backup plan if something pops up, right? Maybe it's not every single day right away. I mean, if that's possible, fantastic. If you don't have any other engagements that you know will pop up, that's wonderful, but just keep that in mind, right? Because you don't want to say I'm going to do it every day and then 3 out of the 5 days something pops up, right? So just think about things. I don't want to tell you guys not to set good goals because you're going to see great results with some of those goals. I just want to make sure that you can stick with it, right? And keep that positive motivation up. 25 sit-ups, 25 push-ups each morning. Love it. Good stuff. Glass of water. Those are the simple things, right? Water is just, it helps in so many ways and we don't drink enough of it. So something like that. Set out your workout clothes. Yep. Tracking of foods and activities. Perfect. Replacing your drink at lunch with water. Perfect. 365 days of gratitude. There it is for mental health specifically. I love that. And it can just be one little tiny thing, right? Like, oh, the sun is beautiful off the snow today, even though it's negative 12 degrees, right? But we find something positive and you make yourself laugh or in a positive mood. Oh my gosh, you guys are fantastic. I love it. All right, I'm going to get back to some of this, but since it's all in the chat, you guys can all see what everyone else is doing. I got to get to the questions here in the upcoming webinars so that people who need to go can go. All right, February, Eat Real. We're going to talk about tips on getting more whole foods in, all that good stuff. Again, we can build on that goal today by getting in one more whole food a day. And then making exercise fun. That's not easy all the time, right? So we're going to talk about some ways to take it up a notch or find some good things to do, especially if you haven't started. But it's for everybody too. It's ways to change it up. All right, if you do lifestyle rewards, you might have questions that you answer, you may not. So for those of you new to lifestyle rewards, if you do have questions, it will prompt you to put in the answers. So these will be the questions. You can either take a screenshot right now or you can download the PDF. Again, they will be on there within the next day or so on our blog, which the link will be on the next slide. But if you have to answer questions, these are what there are. So if you're halfway listening, hopefully you can answer these. I don't make them too hard. And then here's our contact information, right? So the blog, that's where you're going to find the past webinars. That's where you can register for upcoming. We have a post that you can register for all of the webinars. So even if you can't go to all of them, you'll get a prompt, right? It'll remind you, and then you can go to the blog and watch the recording, even if you can't come live. You can follow us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We've got lots of good tips and fun things. We just finished our 12 days of giveaways, 12 healthy days in December. So we have different things like that throughout the year. So make sure you subscribe and check that out. And then you can always reach out to us, right? You can give us a call. You can email us with questions. You can set up a health coaching call. We're more than happy to touch base to help keep you accountable with some of these fantastic SMART goals that you guys are setting right now. They're still coming in and I love it. All right, that's what I've got for today. Let me see if there's any other questions. Let's see, most of it's just goals. I love it, guys. Good stuff. Now, for those of you who have questions on, hold on, let me just do this. For those of you who have questions on lifestyle rewards and getting points and stuff, it's different for every company. So I would, you can email us to ask. You can, you should have a participant guide that you get. So, refer to those too, because again, everyone's a little bit different as far as what they do for the points and stuff for webinars. So, all right, everybody. Well, thank you for starting off this year in a wonderful way. Keep those goals in mind, write them down, keep them at the forefront of your life, one small step each day. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Take care, everybody.